Hello, everybody, and welcome to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you all for listening. I'm Chris Hatfield. That's Ian Kundle. It is the last podcast of the year 2024. Ian, how are you feeling? Does this feel like a significant turn the page moment for you? Just anything to keep you from bringing up, the other thing about that you and Mike got on me for last time.
Oh yeah. Nice to have you back.
Thank
you. No,
for the record. Okay. I'm not going to avoid it. I went on Twitter and looked. This is going to sound like garbage. I know. Whoever it was that did send the song lyrics took them down because I can't find them. I was going
because
to record
you reported him to the Musketeers.
The Musketeers? What?
But that's what happened. Let's be honest. You reported him.
What's the Musketeers? I'm sorry. I'm an old.
Oh, just Elon and his boys.
Oh, okay. No, I swear to
nice
God.
deflection, by the way. I've watched enough CSI to know when someone's deflecting because they don't want to answer the question.
I'm not deflecting. No, I swear I was going to record a video and clap back at the two of you, and then it was gone. So I'm sorry. If that one person puts the lyrics back up, I will record it.
I don't know why. I don't get why you keep doing this. This is such a bad hill to stay on, but
I'm a man of my word.
But no, I'm it's almost the new year, which I think for me when January 1st hits, it's on to the next season. Everything up until now is kind of like residual, kind of like follow up of 2024 season plus setting the table. But once January 1st hits, once we get past the New Year's Day bowl games, it's really when things kick off, I think, full swing, because we're about 6 weeks out from players reporting. So
it's crazy.
It's coming quick. And
if you go by social media, the Red Sox missed their opportunity to sign anybody.
Well, the offseason's over, so
yeah, it is. No, it is most certainly not. We've got a lot to talk about. Walker Buehler is a Red Sox. Couple other folks are Red Sox that Ian and Mike didn't talk about last time. Giovanni Moran, Yoiker Fajardo, Mickey Gasper, and Cam Boozer are gone. What does that mean about building the roster? What is left to do? Craig Breslow talked with the media today, and they asked him some questions, and he answered them. So we got some stuff to talk about there, and of course, as always, your emails. But first, before we get much further down the tracks, I want to mention if you want to support the show, spread the word. Tell whoever it is that you are about to share a New Year's Eve kiss with. The perfect way to mark the moment, either shortly before or shortly after. You've got that special someone and you say, you bring happiness to my life, just like a podcast that I'd like to share with you. You share it with them on New Year's Eve. It'll go over great. Trust me. I am in fact married. Trust me, it works. I know that probably doesn't. That's another thing. People don't believe that in the Christmas song thing. But anyway, that's the easiest way to spread the word. Is to help us out is spread the word. And of course, you can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen. And you can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects and get some perks for your support of the show. Of course, as always, send your emails to podcast@SoxProspects.com. We want to talk about what you all want to hear about. And Ian, we've had this script for how long? Like 2 years now. And I have just noticed that I have "and of course" here in like 2 out of 3 consecutive sentences.
Oh, I've noticed it and I just skip it.
Good.
If you listen back, you'll hear that I've noticed it and I just overlook it.
I mean, I don't read the script directly anymore anyway.
Well, I'm a professional, so I don't get flustered.
By the way, I want to clear something up that you said on a prior episode you did with someone who wasn't me. I don't remember if it was Jeff, Mike, or someone else, but or Chris Clegg maybe. I do not tell you what to say, good sir. I have told you many times you could tweak the script if you wanted to.
I don't remember the context of what you're talking about, but okay.
You said I say the things I'm told to say or something on an episode like many months ago, and it has stuck.
Well, there's a script.
And and you can write you can tweak it. You're the talent.
No, I know. I do most of the time, but if I want to blame someone for something, it's obviously going to be you. So
yeah, that's fair. All right, well, let's get into it.
Because you wrote it originally, so.
I did. It's true. All right. Biggest news since the last episode is Walker Buehler, Ian. I have so many thoughts on this. I personally liked the signing. I think it kind of fit where they were. There were a lot of people who still thought they were going to sign Corbin Burns.
And did they think that Boston was moving to the West Coast also?
Well, I mean, getting beyond the fact that,
he wasn't going to take that. I mean,
Yeah, he
I
turned
don't.
down a bit. He turned down more money, right? He turned down more money
But the
from
point is,
who?
he was never going to take that deal with the Red Sox or any East Coast team. That's
No.
what it came. Like, if you wanted to get, and
Who was it
I
who
think
offered him more money than
Toronto
Arizona
and the
did?
Giants, I think.
Toronto was the big one. That's
Well,
right.
like I think Carabas talked about it on Section 10, and he said he didn't know anything with, well, probably
Well, not
seemingly
while
having an
drinking.
idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, Burns, if he was going to stay east, it was going to be a massive number that no one was going to go to, because he clearly wanted to be closer to home, and good for him. I don't blame him for
Yeah,
that. Like, that's awesome. Like,
I get
if
it.
you could take 210 million and not have to commute to work anymore, or excuse me, and
Money
not
is
have to
not
leave, like
everything.
not have to move, just be at home, or 250, but you have to live on the East Coast and your family stays on the West Coast. I don't blame him for doing it. It's nice to
Hmm.
see someone do that. Like,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
um, so yeah, I think that Burns was just not a realistic target is my biggest takeaway,
But
and they
yeah.
pivoted in accordance.
Well, and here's well, they signed Bueller before Burns signed,
Yeah,
and
but
that's the thing
they
that
had an
got me.
idea,
Well,
I'm
no, no, no,
sure.
no, no. But I'm with you on that. I'm saying the thing that got me was the people who thought they signed after they signed Bueller that they were also going to sign Burns. It didn't make sense. Like at
No.
some point you do. It's not that you have too many pitchers. You can never have too much pitching, as we've heard over and over again. It's at some point your money is better spent elsewhere. And the signing of Bueller signaled they weren't going to go get Burns. Like, I'm
Well,
sorry.
and I think that is a fair complaint about the Bueller, and you kind of tack the Patrick Sandoval deal on. I've seen that a decent amount on social media. Is basically that if you're going to give, you gave those two combined, what is it, like 30 million, 32
Hmm.
million AAV or whatever it is,
Sure.
that could have been better used for someone more impactful. Um, but the counter to that is the Burns thing. You're not getting him for that number.
No.
And
And
after Burns,
it's for
like, do you
eight
want 5 years
years.
of Jack Flaherty? Like, no,
Right.
I don't.
Right.
So it's
Right.
just I there just wasn't, and I think this is kind of something that I kind of been thinking about a lot of this entire off season with the Red Sox is this isn't really a very good off season for in terms of the free agents available for what they Red Sox need. Um, and I think it fits, like, pitching wise. The Max Fried
Yeah. I don't know that I agree.
was a good fit,
Yeah.
but they also, the Yankees outbid them, so they pivoted to Crochet. But after that, you look at it's Corbin Burns is the other top, and Blake Snell were the top guys. Snell and Burns are both West Coast guys. They both took deals to stay on the West Coast. After that, there's a pretty steep drop off, and I'd much rather, if I'm going to be committing money to pitching, I'm in favor of, if you're dipping into like the 29 to 33-year-old, 32-year-old market,
Hmm.
short-term deals, because none of those guys are that appealing to me on a longer-term deal. And then similarly with the position players, and we'll probably talk this in a little bit, like Alex Bregman is a fit ish, but I think it's more that he's just the best available player. It's not that, like, a perfect fit would be someone with Alex Bregman skills who plays the outfield, who's in their
Yeah.
mid to late 20s.
It's not quite Pablo Sandoval, Hanley Ramirez, go get the best guy on the market, whoever it is, and pay them like they're the best guy on the market. It's not quite that because I do think there is something of a fit for Bregman.
Well, Bregman is a fit offensive skills wise. And
Offensive skills wise, and I think the locker room thing, there's something to it.
yes, and he also would be a fit defensively if they could move Devers to DH, but
They're
there's
not going to.
the Yoshida size problem there. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you can't do that, that's where the fit starts to fall apart for Bregman. Because
But
I don't love him. Like, I would sign him, don't get me wrong, because it makes you better. And at the end of
right.
the day, that's the name of the game. But him at second base, I'd much rather have him at
That
third
doesn't
base
make
where he's
sense.
Gold Glove defense. But
Signing Bregman to play second base doesn't make sense long term. Signing Bregman to play second base is
if short term it does, if you can
he's
get him for like 2 years,
going
sure.
he's going to move to third. We just need to convince Rafi Devers that he's not a third baseman, and we need to get rid of Yoshida.
Which
And it's
both of
not going to
those
happen
things are
until next
easier said than
offseason.
done. Yeah.
Right. And it's not going to happen until next offseason
At the earliest. I mean,
at the earliest.
yeah. Like,
Because,
there's
I
no
mean, because here's
guarantee
the
you
thing with
can.
Yoshida is that, like, if it were just, it's not that he's bad, it's just that his fit is not good on this team.
Yeah.
In
And that's why,
that,
and I've seen some people say, well, why not just DFA him? Because you're not going to eat $18 million a year for
no,
a guy who's
no team
useful.
is going to do that for, like, a guy that's, like, okay.
Yeah.
This isn't Pablo Sandoval where it's like sunk cost, ship him on a rocket into the
You
sun.
legitimately can't play him. He will be a solid contributor this year offensively.
He'll
It's
hit
just,
sixth or seventh. He'll be
he'll
fine.
he's going to hit like 275, 280, probably with 15 to 20 home runs if he
Mm-hmm.
plays enough, and hit close to have like an OBP in the mid threes, like
Yep.
with an OPS around 800. That's a decent player. Like,
It's just that
it's
they,
just that the fact that he can't play defense and he hits left-handed and he
mhm.
can't run is a kind of a hindrance for this team.
Sure.
But anyway, on Walker Buehler, like,
Walker Bueller.
I think that at the name of the game this offseason for the Red Sox was raising the ceiling of the team. They just didn't have very many guys with that sort of 3+, 4+ WAR upside. And at the rotation, they've added two guys this year who can do that, and that's, I think,
Uh-huh.
the most encouraging thing. And yes, and I completely understand that there's complaints about the Red Sox not spending long term. You know, everything. Crochet's not making a lot of money unless they obviously they could extend him still, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But Bueller's a 1 year deal, so there's still those concerns about, hey, when are the Red Sox going to start giving out long term contracts? And I think that's very fair. But when you look at just the pitching market that was left, I just don't see a great fit for them for a multi-year deal because for the reasons that Burns would have been, but he was not coming here. So it's like when you know that, I completely understand why the pivot was to Walker Buehler, because we've seen it over and over again with pitchers that second year back is the one from TJ is kind of the sweet spot for when you want to start having them, because the first year back can be a little iffy, which it was for him. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's no doubt, there's no arguing that he struggled last year, save for
Yeah.
that end of the season,
The
that little stint in the
postseason, not
playoffs.
even into the season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he was not good last year. Like, I think he had like a 6 ERA. I think he might have been -4.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you go back, you're talking about a pitcher who for several years was a perennial Cy Young contender, one of the best pitchers in the league. He's only 30 years old, so it's not like you're getting a 35, 36 year old on a 1 year deal. Yeah, I mean, he finished in the top. He finished fourth in the Cy Young in 2021. He was very good in 2022 before he got hurt. So this
Negative
is a
point
guy who,
2 F4, by the way. You were right.
what was he?
Negative point 0.2. So
Yeah,
essentially he was replacement level.
B War has him at -1.3 last year.
Yeah, that's well.
So
I forget
I
which
don't,
one. One of
which
them
I
uses
don't get
like
the difference. One of them uses FIP, right? I think that's the
one
big
of them uses
difference.
FIP. One of them uses like ERA.
Yeah,
Um,
but I
yeah,
mean, so if you can, get Bueller back to being at least a number 3 starter, and ideally, pushing towards a number 2, the rotation looks a lot better. And a rotation of Crochet, Bueller, Hauk, Bayo, Giolito, Crawford, like, that's 6 legit major league starters right there. And that's something not a lot of teams have. That's really nice depth, and it's augmented. Obviously, you got Sandoval coming, and then you got all the guys in AAA. So they've really put together a really nice group of starters there. And I think that
yep,
just with what was left, I'm okay with Bueller on a 1 year deal with a mutual option that will. I can never. I don't get the point of that. Obviously, it's just an accounting thing, because there's a mutual option. There's really no benefit from either side or there's no way both of them are going to accept it. But
yeah,
yeah, I think that I like the move in that context. Especially since I don't see what bigger move it was precluding them from is the big thing. And I think that is a fair complaint that him and Sandoval, that 30 million could have been put to someone else. But my response to that would be who? Because, and I think this is something that I noticed with the Teoscar Hernandez when he signed with the Dodgers. Just because people or like the media or the public or fans think it's a fit doesn't mean the team does. Like, the Red Sox were not in on Teoscar Hernandez at all, really, it seems. So, I
hmm
mean, and that's
hmm
Cotillo said that, Jared said it, like, multiple people have reported that. So it's like, I wouldn't like saying the Red Sox missed out on someone like Teoscar Hernandez isn't true. If you're not interested, you don't miss out on the player. So I think that,
Well, the point would be that they missed out by not being in on the player. Like
but
that's what that
but
person
that
is
but
saying. They think the Red Sox should have been in on a guy.
but no, but that's not what I saw. I saw a lot of, like, the Red Sox missed out on one of their top targets, and it's like, he wasn't a
Oh,
target.
I mean, well, so then moving on, I guess, from that piece of it, Ian, with the 6 guys they have, if I had gone to you before the offseason started and said this is the rotation they're going to come away with, would you have found that acceptable? They're going to trade for Crochet, they're going to sign Bueller, they're going to sign Sandoval to be the midseason and maybe 20. And I mean, Sandoval looks to me, I know you guys were talking about Sandoval already in the last episode, but Sandoval looks to me like the Giolito replacement next year. If
Yeah.
When Giolito walks, that seems what that looks like to me.
Well, Giolito, when he's your mid rotation starter, not when he's an ace, like last year.
Right. Wait, sorry. So meaning what? Explain that to me.
Just that when Giolito was signed last year, he basically was going to be their number one
Oh,
pitcher.
right,
And
right, and
versus Sandoval, this now he's like a
sure,
back end
okay,
guy,
I
and
get it
that's what
now.
Sandoval is going to be
Yes,
next year. I was
yes.
making a joke
No,
about
no,
last
that no,
offseason.
that makes that went over my head, but I get it now. So yeah, I'm fine with this. It works. Like I think
Well, I
it.
think the team is better. I mean, that's
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the rotation is better. Is it the route I would have gone? Probably not. But at the end of it's the same thing I was kind of talking about before. Is we don't know what their target list is. We don't know what other guys were available. Like
Where
you've
would
got
you have gone first, Freed?
yeah. I
Yeah.
just would have gotten Freed,
Yes,
but
Freed
I
or
also
Snell if it was possible.
Snell would have been fine too. But yeah, I would have gone Freed or Snell instead of Crochet.
Hmm.
Because I just at the end of the day, I think that the way that these top teams compete is you have that balance of prospects and like high price free agents or trade acquisitions. And I just am hesitant to deal from the very top of the system. But I completely get why we talked about on the trade package why they were willing to do that one. And I get the pivot to Crochet. Now you just got to extend him still. Like that's the part.
Yeah,
If you don't
and
extend him, then that's a problem.
and I
Because
wonder how much
I
not
don't.
wanting. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just
Sorry.
gonna say that I don't. If I'm them, I don't want him going into the season unextended. Like
Yeah, yeah. To me, I wonder how much of the not wanting to overextend for a free agent is them looking at Crochet, looking at Anthony and Campbell, looking at maybe a Casas, looking at maybe a Duran, and saying we're going to need money to extend these guys we want to keep around.
well, then I should get on that. Like
They should, 100%.
I would Churio both Campbell and Anthony right now. Churio extension is what I mean by that.
So the one thing that you guys talked about this last episode, I think the one thing that didn't get mentioned, and I don't think it keeps you from doing the Churio extension, is if you sign a guy before he debuts to an extension, he is no longer eligible to get you a PPI pick.
Is that true though? Because Corbin
It
Carroll
is.
just got the Diamondbacks one, and he is
He had debuted.
what
He
when
had
he signed his
debuted.
extension? Oh, had he?
Yeah. Yeah. The only one I think that signed it like Churio doesn't isn't eligible to get the Brewers one, I think. I think like Colt Keith probably wouldn't because he signed his extension before he debuted, right? Um, but I think Corbin Carroll had debuted before he signed his extension. Now, what I would love is like they agree to it in principle and they say play one game first on,
Oh, so what it is okay. They're only eligible. They're not eligible for the rookie pick. They are still eligible for
MVP
the
pick.
MVP one.
Really?
I mean, I would think so because what I'm reading is they become ineligible for the incentive based on their performance as a rookie. It specifies as a rookie,
Interesting. That would be
right? So
strange.
when that,
But the
let's
whole
see.
thing is strange, kind of. So, all right. Well, we'll look more into that. I mean, and that said, like, I love the idea of extending them anyway. Like, betting on them winning Rookie of the Year or finishing top three in the MVP voting is such a gamble as opposed to like getting them locked up before they play a game. But like I said, I don't understand why teams wouldn't just agree to the extension, have them play a single game, and then announce it. Right? Like, what's stopping you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure MLB though might not
MLB will
look
probably
that
step in,
kindly upon that.
but it's
Okay,
also just
maybe
a silly
maybe
rule.
so maybe the PPI picks in general just it does include the MVP ones. It's just poorly
Okay.
worded, is what it might
Yeah.
seem like. So
That's
I
because
guess
that
you're
that would seem like a weird line to draw. Um,
fair. Then I would amend it to say yeah, just extend them as soon as they're called up. Then,
yeah.
but
Or if I mean if you're only going to get it done when they're in the minors, that I would still do it personally. It's just that you got to
yeah, I
admit
mean, if you
giving up
can
a
get a
draft pick
good
for it.
deal, I would still do it.
Yeah, 100%.
But I think that is a fair point though that maybe they're safe. But the thing is, like at this point, it's kind of you need to see it to believe it. Because at the
Yeah,
end of the day, I think that everyone who's concerned about the team spending is rightfully so because we still haven't seen
yeah,
it. Like
yep. Hasn't
everything they're
happened.
doing is short term. Their biggest acquisition was via trade, so there was no money. I mean, he's literally making what $3 million or something in
Yeah, yeah.
arbitration this year. So
Well, yeah, we don't know what he's making yet, but it's going to be somewhere
and
in there.
that's
That's
and
the
that's
estimate.
why when I look at where they're at right now, I think Red Sox payroll, who obviously does a great job with the stuff on our site and on Twitter, and his doc has him I think like 26 million under. the
Yeah.
first level right now, and that's why I do wonder like what right-handed batter are you getting with that? Because I just can't see them going over that number before the
You
season
don't think they're going
starts.
to go over?
I could see them going over in season if, but you get to the deadline and they're in a really good spot to win the division. But I just am I need to see it to believe it until I just don't see them going over in the offseason. I don't know. That's
Mm-hmm.
because I mean I fall back on what history over the last 5 6 what I can't remember the last time they were over whatever it was 5 years ago 6 years ago. Um, since then they've just shown no like interest in doing that. So
Yeah.
why would you think they are going to? I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Um, let's move on a little bit. There were some other moves that the team made. Um, basically trading the way it's rather than just DFAing the lowest man on the totem pole on the 40 man to do counter moves for transactions. They've actually been trading guys on the 40 man to get other players. So, for example, on the 21st, the Red Sox traded left-handed reliever Cam Boozer to the White Sox for Yoiker Fajardo. Fajardo, it was in the DSL last year, but had really good numbers. Kind of an interesting prospect. Entered our rankings, Ian, in I think at like 36 or something. Uh, kind of interesting guy. Your scouting report is up on soxprospects.com. Everyone go check it out. Uh, kind of an interesting little bit of business there, Ian. I like it. It's that's a great use for Cam Boozer, I think personally.
Well, yeah. Do you want to go through all three moves and just kind of
I
talk
guess we
about them
can,
at
and then we'll
once?
knock
Or
them all out. I mean,
yeah,
the other ones were Mickey Gasper getting traded to the Twins for Giovanni Moran, who I why is he not on the 40? Did
because
he
he got non-tendered last offseason
he got
when he
non-tendered?
was
Got it.
recovering from Tommy John, and then they got
Got it.
re-signed to a minor league deal for 2 years.
Okay. Got it. Got it. I mean,
It was
I
the
like
Wyatt Mills
that.
contract.
It was the what? The Wyatt Mills.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. Except Moran is a lot better than Wyatt Mills. He had he was pretty good in Minnesota a couple of years back.
yeah.
I like that move. And then what's the third move you're talking about? Oh, Emmanuel
Valdez and
Valdez
Joe.
for Joe
Yeah,
Bogatsky, which we've forgotten to talk about for a couple of episodes now. Um, I like Moran and Fajardo better than Bogatsky, but Gasper and Boozer are probably a little bit more value than Valdez at this point. Uh, I think those were nice bits of business. Guys that, Fajardo, I'll always take a low minors, arm flyer. Moran looks like a potential depth guy for the bullpen. Vygotsky is interesting as a late, well, he was the 20th round guy, right? For Pittsburgh, who I think they, must
like
see something
18th
there.
round or something.
Yeah, he was a late
Well,
round guy.
it's clearly someone they were interested in coming out of the draft.
Yes, that's clearly an amateur scouting guy rather than because he
No,
didn't
19th
pitch.
19th round, excuse me.
Yeah,
And he
because he didn't
signed for
pitch at all.
25K. So I wonder if it was someone they were trying to line up as like an
Hmm.
undrafted free agent or something, and Pittsburgh popped him.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just think that it's nice. It's encouraging. I love like the attention to detail and the kind of maximizing your assets. It shows how far the 40 man's come that, the guys that they're DFAing off the bottom of it are guys that your teams are willing to give up something for.
Hmm.
And I think that it's good that, I'd much rather this than basically just, DFAing guys and just having to
Losing a guy.
release them or losing them for
Yep.
free. So I think that being able to go out and get something for the guys that you're moving off is really shrewd. And I like the way that they kind of have like these moves like work in conjunction. So you have like you trade Cam Boozer, who's your fourth or fifth lefty on the 40, and you get back a lefty who has performed better than he has at the major league level before, obviously coming off an injury, who's not on the 40 now.
Meaning
So
meaning Moran.
yes, Moran. So you now have a lefty in your system who has that major league experience. I mean, he was almost a 2 WAR guy, or what was he? Excuse me, he's almost 1 WAR. He's 0.9 WAR in 2022. Um, and you have that guy now, and he's not under 40, so you can kind of move him at will. And then you got Carlos Narvaez from the Yankees, and then you trade Mickey Gasper. So there's catcher replacement, which I think we'll talk more about Narvaez in a little bit.
Yeah.
But you trade Mickey Gasper, but you've already gotten another catcher. So I just think that I like kind of what they're doing is maximizing the assets they have and getting, it's not even as they're trading prospects, they're still going out and replenishing the system with guys they like, which I'm always in favor of. Vogataski, it's a tough one to pronounce. Funky arm slot,
Bogatsky.
Bogatsky, thank you. But there's an A in there, so I don't know.
Ah,
But yeah, like Kai, it seems like a very Red Sox pick. Low arm slot, low release height, like
yeah,
funky, deceptive, mid 90s, high spin breaking ball, change up, like checks a lot of boxes there. Fajardo is obviously the most interesting to me. I think where did he slot in? Like 30
30. I
something,
think
40 something.
36 or so. Yeah,
So obviously
something
the
like
system
that.
is different now than because like five guys have graduated from when we did our end or not graduated, been moved on since we did our end of season list. But projectable, athletic,
35. Sorry,
6'3", 180,
35.
low 90s fastball, touching 95 already. Slider change up. Slider has shown some bat missing ability. He was someone who I believe Baseball America ranked in their DSL prospect list, or at least talked about as one of the better arms down there. So, and he signed for 400K. This wasn't like a guy who didn't get any bonus. 400K is more than the Red Sox have given to pitchers in a while. So, getting a guy like that, for Cam Boozer, I think is a good piece of business, especially since Boozer was blocked. Similarly, getting Moran for Gasper, who Mickey Gasper's a great story, but he's not someone you're going to worry about losing.
Yeah,
So I like it. I like that they've been able to, get assets and kind of replenish the depth, start to replenish the depth in the system with these moves.
yeah. I mean, him and Boozer, both great stories, but I think, teams don't want great stories. The great story is nice if it doesn't happen because you have, five guys on the IL.
Yeah. And then the day, like those guys, Gasper's what, 29 already, Boozer's 32.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. These aren't
it's not
guys
like
that are going
you're
to be
moving.
pitching for you for
And then Valdez, that
10
kind of
years.
that ship had sailed here. So
Yeah,
yeah,
the fit
I
is
like
he's
all the
another guy
moves.
that just didn't have a fit. I mean, he's a
Yeah.
guy that like he needs to go to a team that can just give him every day at bats and see if it's going to work. Putting him in AAA again just didn't make any sense. Although it
Well,
is
especially
interesting.
and the Red Sox with
Go ahead.
no, just I was just say just with the emphasis on defense, like it's just not a fit for that
Yeah,
either.
that's true. I was going to say when's the last time you looked at our 2025 projections?
Like 10 minutes ago.
Because we have literally nine position players on the roster in Worcester and a
Yeah,
bunch
no, I
of
mean
vet
it's
acquisition spots. Like they are thin
it's
in
it
AAA
it's
right now. It's a hair
interesting
side.
how few minor league free agents they've signed so far.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there are others. Like, I mean, we know that they're apparently signing right-handed reliever Noah Davis, who he would be on a minor league deal. Austin Adams is another one that's been reported that they're going to sign to a minor league deal with a presumably a non-roster invitation to spring training. But this is all pitchers. It seems like they love picking up pitchers. All the minor league Rule 5 guys were pitchers.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. I mean, there's just and I mean, this is something I'm sure a topic for one next season, but once like the big three graduate, it gets thin quickly at the
Quick,
top.
quick for
Yeah.
hitters. Yes, I mean you
Yeah.
look like that Portland lineup. Like it's got some good guys on it. Like it's got Yosti, it's got Alan Castro,
I
Mikey
mean, it's
Romero,
it's better than
Blaze
Greenville.
Jordan. But yeah, I mean again, Greenville's got a few guys: Miggy Blaze, Nelly Taylor, Johan Fran if he's healthy, potentially. But like the fact that they are focusing so much on the pitching side of the ball is very clear right now. When I look up and down the system, the pitching looks a
Well,
lot
and
deeper.
it also looks that way because they just traded their first round pick last year, who was a hitter. Like,
They traded their last two first round picks,
yeah, fair. That's yeah,
right?
fair. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I
So
mean, because last year it was clearly signed that draft the best guy available in the first, and then go heavy pitching, and then they moved him. Like, yeah, that's
yeah,
a great point. That's a great
so
point. So yeah, all right, I think that's it on transactions. Do we want to talk quickly about Breslow's comments today, and then we'll hit some emails?
yeah.
Um, what were your bigger takeaways, Ian? I'll let you start. Give me your first big takeaway from Breslow's comments today, because I think there's really only two or three things that I come away with as news, and the rest is
I
like,
think that this open to the 6-man rotation was the most interesting to
yes,
me
that was interesting.
because
Yeah,
it does after it, assuming it's and everything we've heard. I want to say it was Rob Radford or I can't remember who mentioned that Giolito. It might have been Giolito, honestly, on
he,
Bradford's podcast or
yes,
on
it
some
was,
podcast
it was.
that he's going to be full go for spring training.
Hmm.
And so if he's full go for spring training, it does leave them with sick. And this is assuming health, which is obviously we saw what happened last year with Bayo and Pavetta were hurt by the end of April. Like
And
there's
I
no
think that's
guarantee they're
part
going
of
to
it.
get to the end of spring training with 6 pitchers, but as of now, they have 6 legitimate major league quality starters.
Hmm.
And it's interesting how are you going to do that? And I know that I think Giolito talked about he's not a fan of the 6-man rotation, but
Yep.
when you look at I don't hate limiting him, Crochet, and Houck's innings because I look at that rotation and like I'm fine with Bayo going, 180, 200. Granted, not many pitchers throw 200 innings these days,
No, just say
but
180 at this point.
like Crawford is the same thing. Like Houck did it last year, though we saw how much his efficiency and kind
Slowed
of
down.
how successful he was,
Hmm.
how much his
Hmm.
performance dropped in the second half of the year. I don't hate a six man if the result is you're keeping Houck, Giolito, and Crochet Fresher. So I think
Yeah,
it's really interesting that the Red Sox are open to it since I feel like in the past they've come out and said we're not open to that.
and to me, I mean, there's a few things. The problems with the six-man rotation is that you have now one fewer bullpen arm. And it doesn't appear that they're going to be going into the year with, I mean, I don't know what the role is going to be for Garrett Whitlock. It seems clear he's in the bullpen at this point. It seems clear they're not going to try and stretch out Slayton, I don't think. Um, you've got Chapman and Hendricks there, Justin Wilson. And then from there, I think you're going to wind. The way it works is one or both of two things to me, Ian. A, your starters go deeper into games because they're only working every sixth day.
Yeah,
Um, you need that because the thing is, if a guy gets blown out and leaves in the first or something or gets hurt, and that bullpen gets worked that night, you are not going to get a good chance to recover.
especially if it happens like beginning of the week when you don't have an off day, something like that.
Yeah.
It can mess up your plans for the entire week.
You've got think about when that happens when you've got a five-man rotation, and now imagine you've got one fewer relief pitcher.
Well, because I look at their rotation and or excuse me, the projected bullpen, and like if you have Winkowski and Whitlock as both doing multi-inning guys,
You
that's
could,
kind of what you need to be able to do the
you
six man.
could,
Is you need two arms that you can throw for 2 to 3 innings to be
yeah.
both guys to balance out, and then obviously the rest of the guys are 1 inning. Maybe you push two, but so they do have like the early makings of something that could maybe make that work. But you
Hmm.
still, I think they need to go out and add a couple more bullpen guys for that to be more of a realistic thing.
You know who I wonder? I mean, I wonder if like Cooper Criswell has a better shot at making the bullpen in that kind of a
Yeah,
situation.
because you really do need a guy who,
You
hey,
need
let's
length,
one of these guys gets bombed and is out after the second inning. We can't pitch like 4 relievers today. You're just gonna have to go out there and give us 5 innings or 6 innings.
or not even five or six. Just give us three or four, and I don't know, keep it close. I don't know. Yeah, but the other thing is just you have to have a lot of guys who can go up and down. And they're starting to get there. You've got Penrod, Kelly, Weiss. I mean, Penrod, everything they've said is he's going to start. I mean, we've got Fitzpriester, Robbins in the starting rotation. Apparently, they're going to start Fulmer. Grant
I just think to
Gambrell's
me
still
that reads
alive.
as they just want to keep guys stretched out for
I
multiple
think that's what
innings.
they're going to do, and I think you're going to have a lot of like 5 inning guy followed by 4 inning guy games in AAA this year
Yeah,
between like Drohan, Gambrell.
or a
They're going to
bunch, or
stretch
even
Penrod
some
out.
like 3-3-3s or 4-4-1s,
Sure,
like things like
sure,
that.
sure. And I get the not wanting to have guys waste their bullets in AAA, you know? The name of the game is not having your AAA starter. Like, look, it was nice what Jason Alexander gave them this year, but that's not the goal of a guy that you're going to use in the major league rotation
No, but
or
he also
bullpen.
was huge for having in AAA because you need those guys to
100%.
give you
100%. And
those innings in AAA.
that's why I'm wondering who that is this year because I don't see where else you put a AAA MLFA at this point. Like,
Well, they haven't signed any starters. All the guys they've signed are relievers.
yeah, well, I mean, it's not even signed. It's Hobie Harris in minor league Rule 5. It's Noah Davis as a signing. Giovanni Moran's a trade.
But like Austin Adams too is who I was kind of
Austin
counting
Adams, I
him.
guess, but I think my guess is Austin Adams has an opt out.
I would
I can't
assume.
imagine he goes to
Yeah.
AAA. And I think Austin Adams fits in that major league bullpen. So, yeah, I'm curious how that would work, but I think it's also one of those things where it's like let's have 6 healthy starters at the end of spring training. You know what I mean? Let's get there because I remember
Well,
like thinking they were going to sign 2 guys or get 2 starting pitchers. I kind of figured a Crawford was getting traded. That's where my head was for the longest time, right? And because it's like that raises the ceiling, like we were
yeah.
talking about. But I don't know who you're trading Crawford for at this point. Like I'm not trading him for the reliever, and who's the right-handed bat? I don't know who it is.
Well, then that's the tricky thing is it all comes back to another one of Brazel's comments, which maybe we can transition to, was that they are looking to balance the lineup and looking to and add to the bullpen. And
Yep, which is not
we talked
surprising.
about the bullpen. We talked about balancing the lineup a little bit earlier, but it's like if it's not Bregman, I think one of the other names that they looked at is like Adam Duvall, Randall Greichek.
There was a
Those,
report
those,
about Willie Adamas, but that never made sense to
well, he
me.
also signed with the Giants,
Oh,
so
that's right. Yeah. That's right. I forgot about that.
but like I look at Greichuk or Grichuk and Adam Duvall, and are we sure they're that much better than like just having Rob Snyder do that job?
Right.
Like I'm serious. Or like I don't I would not be in favor of signing one of those guys if it's like, hey, we're gonna block Christian Campbell by doing this, or like I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
I just do wonder if this is like they go out and they get, someone of that caliber and then they call it an offseason and realistically the hope is that Christian Campbell and Roman Anthony both just blow the doors off in spring training and they end up with both of them somehow in the lineup. I don't
Would
know.
you hate a lineup of going 1 to 9 on the diamond? Wong, Casas, Campbell, Devers, Story, Duran, Rafaela, Abreu, Anthony. Would you hate that 1 to 9?
No, but it's too left-handed. I mean, I don't think you would be
It is too
ideal.
left-handed, but I mean,
I mean,
I
I
don't
guess it's
hate
only
it.
5-4. It's a 5-4 split. Well, the problem is when we say it's too left-handed, the problem is like Rafael is not really a major, like he doesn't crush lefties.
Right. That's the well,
Um,
Rafaela. I mean, well, okay. Let's put Duran in center, or Anthony in left, Abreu in right, and Yoshida at DH with Rafaela as the utility guy that gets 400 plate
yeah,
appearances.
I mean, it's tricky
I don't
because
hate it.
I think I don't hate that lineup. I'm kind of for it, but I also recognize that people are just pining for a big signing on the
Well, and
offensive
again, they
side.
keep saying we're gonna. I mean, balance the offense means sign a right-handed bat
It
or
doesn't mean
trade.
sign Alex Bregman though. It means
No, it
like
doesn't. Yep, it doesn't.
so it's like yeah, it's like a weird situation. Like because I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. Like Bregman, I think skills wise and leadership wise would be a really welcome addition. But it does like if you do add Bregman in and you can if you can play him at third base and push Yoshi and push Devers to DH, great. If
Mhm.
not, it does like there has to be another move with it because
Yeah.
otherwise, like where does either Anthony or Campbell play? And I just with the way the system is set up, I just find it hard to believe there's no reason to wait if you think those guys are going to contribute next year. Like
Yeah.
it's almost better to start them on the opening day roster. And if after a month you're like, we need to, take a step back, send them down because there's nothing worse than what happened to the Pirates last year, where you leave Skeens down, he wins
Yeah.
Rookie of the Year, you don't get a pick, and he gets the
And
full
he.
year of service.
Yep. Exactly.
So it's like I just it's a really interesting balancing act they have because it's on the one hand, I get you want established veterans, you don't want to be going into the season counting on two rookies, but at the same time, the way they've constructed the team, it makes a lot of sense to have those two rookies on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100%. Speaking of the structure of the team, it does seem like Carlos Narvaez is going to be the backup catcher going into the year.
Fine with it. Like
I'm fine with that. I think it's
they still need a third catcher though. I think then they need another catcher in Worcester.
you don't think Zavala is the third catcher?
I mean, he's okay, but then you'd still need another catcher in Worcester.
Oh, I mean, they just need bodies there. Yeah, I mean, they
Yeah.
need guys, 100%.
I mean,
They're
yeah,
going to
Zavala
study
can't hit at
Zavala.
all. Like I'd be
Yeah,
fine with him as like the depth
Hickey's
guy,
not
but
a
I'd
catcher.
want another guy that I could call up to the majors, like a Juan Centeno type there
Yeah, I
also,
just don't.
because
They just yeah,
they just need bodies because it's like Hickey can fake it, but he's probably going to be the everyday first baseman or like something
maybe
like
or
that. So,
DH or something. Yeah, it'll split time.
there's just, and then you look like, I mean, we talked about this, I think before, catcher is just not a very deep position in the system. Like you
No.
get down to double A and it's rough.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I think the thing with Narvaez, and I do wonder if it's kind of just like an allocation of resources thing. It's like Narvaez can give you, if let's say he gives you 80% of the defense that those Carson Kelly, Higashioka type will give you, but he's on the minimum versus 6 million. That's a pretty big difference right there. And you just reallocate that money to the bullpen or something else.
Hmm.
I can completely understand it. And clearly they're very high on Narvaez. I think we talked about it when the trade happened. Like I've heard some good things from scouts. The Yankees have come out and publicly praised him last year ahead of his debut. So he's an interesting guy. And I think that, we'll see what he can do. And now it's just question of, can he step in and connect with the pitchers and kind of like, you want your catcher to be a leader on the field. That obviously can be more difficult when you're on the younger side. But if he can go out there and jump at that role, that I think will be that's a really good asset to have if you can get a catcher on a rookie scale deal. It's the same reason the money wise why people are so high on Teal is if you can have a good catcher whether it be a backup or, a guy who's getting the majority of the reps on that rookie scale deal is just so beneficial and helps you reallocate those funds elsewhere.
What else do we got from Breslow today? Anything else worth talking about, Ian?
I think it's interesting that they're not in on or they have not gotten the meeting with Sasaki. I just think that's interesting. That ship seems to have sailed before it
Yeah.
even started.
Yeah.
So I would not count on him being here. Obviously, like they did what they had to. They did their due diligence with Breslow going there, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if it's college recruiting and if he doesn't want to come here, there's nothing they can do about that.
Sure.
And then I think the last one was the Casa stuff, because obviously we've heard so many rumors and you've seen so many people have reported, quote unquote, that like the Mariners have turned down trades with Casas and all this stuff. And
Yeah, I mean there was that report from Fine Sand about the Red Sox were in on, they wanted a pitcher, they offered Casas. It seemed like it was for like Wu or I forget which one of the other guys, Gilbert. The Mariners said no, we'll do Castillo, but we want Casas, and they said fine if you take Yoshida and all of his money.
yeah, but
And
then
the
I don't know. I
Mariners
don't. But
said
that my
no to
point. I
that.
don't know what to. Well, if they did, I don't know why the Mariners would say no to that. But
Well, that's the
um,
first problem.
I don't know what to believe with the Costa stuff, because
Right.
Alex Beer came out a couple. I think we talked about before, when he was basically like, they're not, Costas is not involved, or he's not being traded. And so, and then Breslow coming out and saying, so like, I mean, I'm sure there are teams asking about Costas, but
Hmm.
I do think it's an interesting, and it's not a discussion for this episode, but just the way the first base market has kind of come together this offseason is pretty telling, I think.
Hmm.
You look at like Nate Lowe, who's a solid first baseman, solid everyday first baseman, getting traded for just a middle reliever or like a setup guy.
Right.
Same thing with like Josh Naylor, who was one of the Guardians' top performers last year. They traded him for a comp pick, and Slade Ciccone, who was like a fine depth starter. Granted, I'm sure the Guardians will turn him into a solid mid rotation guy, but still, like,
Right.
it's interesting how, and Christian Walker gets 3 for 60 or 320, ending up at 60
Yeah, you were
million.
talking about
Pete
that last
Alonso has no
episode.
contract right now,
Yeah.
and it doesn't seem like anyone's actually interested in him. Like,
Which is weird.
first base is just a weird position in terms of valuing them, I think.
It's devalued. Yeah,
So
100%.
I do think that, I'm sure teams are asking, but I'm sure not. I would hope that the Red Sox are not willing to, sell him at a discount, which they shouldn't. Like, I'd much
No.
rather just have build around Costas. He's, to me, is like a core member of this team.
Yeah. 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 It's good that he came out again, like, and pushed back on that. I do wonder how much of it is his name did come up in discussions, but it wasn't like they were shopping him trying to get rid of him. And I also wonder how much of it is just,
Well, yeah, this can all be nuanced. Like, I'm sure, like,
yeah, there's nuance to it, I'm sure.
because you're gonna, if someone calls and asks about a player, I'm sure you're gonna listen. But
Yeah.
like, that doesn't mean you're shopping him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. Does that close out the Breslow talk? Let's get to some emails. If you want to send us an email, hit us up at podcast@soxprospects.com because we want to talk about what you all want to hear about. And actually, let's start with a couple of Twitter questions, Ian, to knock these off the top of our list. First comes from Keys Van Hemmen. And they say, kind of curious where you guys see Quinn Priester fitting in next year. I see that the obvious answer is as a seventh starter up and down guy, but that seems to ignore how much upside he has. Maybe I'm overvaluing him, though. It is interesting, Ian, that like, yeah, I think that's a fair question, but I think he's got to prove that he's more than that. Is I think the answer to that, and then maybe he gets a shot in 2026. Is that fair?
yeah, I think that ideally he would jump in as like he's gonna be that seventh starter, up and down type. And I don't know if that saying it ignores how much upside he has, though, is a fair way to put it, because as we saw with the Dodgers this year, you're going to need way more than seven starters. So
Hmm.
there's just as good a chance that he ends up going out and making 20 plus starts this season, I think, than there is that he only gets a handful. So um, I think that they recognize his upside, and I think that's why they gave up Nick York, who's a Red Sox, who's a top 10 prospect in the system, is probably going to be the everyday second baseman for the Pirates. So clearly they value him at a pretty high level if they're willing to give up an asset like that to get him.
Hmm.
And I just think that understandably they wanted to go out though and upgrade the top of that rotation, but that doesn't take away his chances of being someone who can maybe slot in the back end this year, or this year if there's injuries or going forward, once things start to clear out, as guys feels like Buehler's up next offseason, Giolito's up. There's going to be a chance if he pitches well for him to grab a rotation spot in 2026 and beyond.
I think that sounds right. Our other Twitter question comes from at not a scowl. Hey Ian, it's hello, I'm here. Hey Ian, it seems like it's obvious that the Sox are in a lefty pitching. I'm kidding, by the way.
Well, you
I
also
was
weren't here because this is from the last
That's
episode, but
true.
he sent
That's
it
true. I'm
after
joking.
I asked for them.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Hey Ian, it seems like it's obvious the Sox are in on lefty pitching. I was wondering where someone like Chris Murphy stands in the organization. I know he's injured, but I haven't seen any status update on him in a while. I thought he looked okay when he came up a couple years ago. Ian, seems like Murphy is one of the gaggle of potential up and down relief arms, and in like a good way, in that they'll use him in the majors this year.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to the lefties, the Red Sox clearly recognize that internally they just don't have a lot coming, and you don't want to be relying on someone coming off Tommy John surgery because obviously Murphy did look really good in 2023. He had some really nice outings prior to his injury, and showed big bat missing ability, good velocity, things like that. But it's just you can't count on that. We don't know how he's going to respond from TJ. And obviously they have way more information than we do right now that I don't think it's been talked about publicly much of at all where he's at. But I think that they obviously still, he's going to be given every chance to kind of reestablish himself as one of those depth lefty pieces. It's just he's got to get back healthy first.
Yep. Next question, Ian. I'll read one from Brian. It says it's from Brian Cashman, general manager of the New York Yankees. I'm skeptical. Who knows? Maybe it is him. But he says, "What's your take on Miguel Blaze's stats? Miguel Blaze's stats in High A. Obviously, some of the poor line can be attributed to bad luck, but with a BABIP way below his career average of 302. But that said, he still dropped his line drive percentage from 30.2% in Low A to around 14% in High A, while hitting many more fly balls. Is just randomness, maybe a slightly different approach or a tougher level? Should we be worried?" Ian, it's funny with Blaze because we talked about this in the rankings episode, trying to figure out where the heck to put him and where he'll be next year based on what he does when he starts. But I mean, the numbers weren't all that great. But I'm not necessarily looking at line drive percentage in the minors, especially because that's counting on how the that's not based on TrackMan. That's based on the guy
No,
up in the
that's
booth.
based on the score.
Yeah, that's based on the scorer. So I've never been a big fan of you know, trusting the line drive percentage type of stuff. But that said, the other metrics were down a little bit.
I mean, there still were some good ones though. Like it's
Yeah,
just it's you need to see it translate on field. Like he's got the raw tools, but does he have that other parts of the game to be able to translate it? And that's remains to be seen. It's why I think we talked about it in the rankings episode that like he's a great example of someone that I could see him being like out of the top 20 or
yep,
inside the top 5 by midseason.
yep.
Because I think we're going to know pretty quickly because this is maybe not. I think this is his Rule 5 year, and this is kind of where the what where things kind of you got to figure it out at some point. You can show so much, as much promise as you can, but if it doesn't translate in on-field production, at some point that's going to catch up to you.
I mean, I don't want to say that he's next year. He does need to be protected next year. That's wild.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to say he's Gilberto Jimenez. He's not. But
But no, that's like apples to oranges. They're
it's
different
apples to
players,
oranges. But
completely
it's
different
also just in
players.
the sense of they're very different players. But it's just at some point, he doesn't have the problems that Jimenez had. That's what would make me worried. He didn't have the like. He's not impacting the ball, and he's now swinging and missing a ton trying to impact the ball that Jimenez had. So it's good that he's not that, but at the same time, like you said, it's got to translate. Um, Next question, Ian, is from John B. He says, "How much of a run prevention improvement could the Red Sox get by moving Rafael Devers off of third? If the Red Sox are really contemplating this, wouldn't some sort of a Yoshida Arenado trade make more sense than signing a free agent?" It's an interesting thought. Your thoughts, sir?
I think it's hard to say because it depends on who they're replacing him with.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
it's not just it's not like you can just
it's not
say
a
like
zero sum.
whoever
Yeah,
they're putting in is average. We don't
yeah.
know who they're putting in. So to me, it's hard to say until we know who they're replacing with. I think though that with Devers, I'm willing to give him this year because I just want to see what he looks like if he can get like the majority or a full season with Story next to him. He had drastically different like numbers when Story was next to him versus a revolving door. And I think that when you watch him, it's just he's someone who he needs that continuity with like a consistent player next to
Yeah.
him who
We've
has
talked about it.
range.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see that kind of happen. And
Hmm.
yeah, we'll look. I feel like after this year is a better time to evaluate. As for the Arenado Yoshida thing, I just, I mean, we talked about Yoshida. I'm just not sure why would the Cardinals want him. Like
Because of
they're
Heimblum, which is
yeah,
not a good reason.
but that's not a good reason. If they're rebuilding, they're not going to want him. Like that
Right.
just and
Right. He doesn't
the
fit
whole
them at
the whole
all.
point of trading Arenado is to get off his money. You're not going to take on money of a similar length contract to get off him, and that's why
Right.
I like if you're trying to make a Yoshida trade, you need to find someone who has a worse contract than him to take back because that's realistically probably your only avenue to getting a trade done, unless you're willing to eat basically all the money and add prospect capital. And if you're doing that, what's the point?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. No, I hear you. Our next question comes from a couple of questions come from Sam. He says, from a legal slash contract perspective, what is the ultimate difference between an opt out and a player option for all practical purposes? Aren't they basically the same decision process? Just one requires a formal decision to stay and one requires a formal decision to leave. Any other considerations I'm missing? I think essentially the difference, as I think of it, and I don't know if this is right or not, Ian, but I think it's basically like opt out is in the middle of the contract, whereas a player option, like you're not going to have an option like a 4 year player option. They just call it an opt out, but it's effectively just it happens in the middle of the contract as opposed to for 1 year at the end. Is really what I think of it. But yeah, it is basically the same thing. It's player, do you want to leave or stay? And
Yeah.
he makes a decision. So I think it's the same thing. His second question is, what does, quote, shopping a player, end quote, look like in practice? Calling around and reminding people when someone is available? Does it involve actual unsolicited trade proposals with various teams? Um, I, when reports say that a team is shopping a player, Ian, I always think of it, and tell me if you agree. I think of it as when they are discussing trades with teams, they're bringing a guy up often as something they'd be willing to give up. I don't think it's that they're calling teams unless it's something like a
No,
player has asked
I'm
for a
sure that does
trade.
happen though. Like,
Well,
yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's like if a player asks for a trade or it's a Nolan Arenado, we need to get out from under this guy's contract. We're shopping him. We're calling and saying, hey, we need to move Arenado. What do you think? But I think these talks between teams are a lot simpler than we often give them credit for being, where it's like they're talking trades and saying, "Hey, this is a guy that might be looking to move. Does he interest you? What would you know?" I think there's a lot of ways it could look. I don't think there's one way that it looks. I don't know if you have further thoughts, but that's kind of what comes to mind for me.
yeah, no, I agree.
All right. Our next question comes from Sam D, who asks, "Was wondering what kind of extension you would be comfortable offering Garrett Crochet." Interesting thought, Ian. I'll let you start. Oh, sorry. What do you think?
I mean, I'd probably try to get him for 6 years. Would be, I think, of the kind of the sweet spot because he's what 26.
I think so.
So I ideally have something going into like his like early 30s at 6 150 maybe. What did Snell get? Let me look. Actually, no, that's it. That's not
No.
good. What I would say you probably want 7 or 8 years at like 140, 150. It's hard to say because he's such a weird case because
He's got
if you're
almost
his
no
agent,
track record.
he's got no track record. If you're his agent, you're going to be like, I want, front of the rotation extension. And if
Yeah.
you're the Red Sox, you're like, you've thrown 100, you've thrown 200 career innings. Like you've also not made very much in comparison to a lot of people. So maybe, let's get some security. So I think it's really hard to kind of push that out. Cause like, I mean, what did Aaron Nola get? Let me look.
He got like 24 and a half.
7 years, 172. Yeah. So I would say probably 6 or 7 years, 150, 160 million and that something
I think
around
that
that.
sounds right.
Yeah. Would
Because
be
the
my
thing is
guess,
with an
but who knows? I
extension
mean,
is,
it's at the end of the day, it's
yeah.
not our money. So I don't like, I would just get him extended. Whatever I just think you have to. If you're, my thing with Crochet is if you're trading that package for him, you have to extend him. You cannot just, you're tying yourself to him
Mhm.
by trading that many assets for him. And you can't just have it be a 2 year commitment. Like this needs to be, he needs to be here for the next 6, 7, 8 years.
The question is whether you're okay taking a year to figure out what he is, knowing that
Well,
it might mean the price tag goes up.
but I don't think there's any reason to wait because at best
Oh, I'm
case,
with you.
because
Yeah.
because if you're him, let's say he has a bad year, he has another injury, you're not going to take an extension. You're just going to wait until you're just going to go to free agency and say, fine, I'll go Sean Manaea it and get a prove it deal and then go get a big contract. Like
Hmm.
I just think there's only downside by waiting.
Yeah, 100%. Our next email is from Daniel, who says, have we gotten to a point where Tristan Casas is being overrated? For a plate vision maestro, he strikes out quite a bit. Also, injuries piling up. I'm not saying he's bad by any means, but to think he's on the level of the big three in terms of being untouchable is wild to me. P.S. As someone who wasn't the biggest fan of the Crochet deal, I'd much rather risk money that you can get back for pitchers rather than multiple top five prospects that you can never get back. But that's just me. Two different things here, Ian. I guess at the Casas point, I don't think I think Casas is being underrated quite a bit with the fact that everyone keeps wanting to just move him, and doesn't consider him a player to build around. Like, yeah, he was hurt last year, um, and didn't perform last year, but he performed the year before that and looked like a player that they could build a lineup around, and he looked like that in the minors too.
Well, but he did perform last year just after his injury, which was a really bad injury for a hitter. He wasn't very good. Like
Sure,
if you look at him pre-injury, he was crushing the ball.
sure,
So
fair.
I think, and also the strikeout thing, like everyone strikes out. I mean, it's like if we're gonna play that game, like everyone on the Red Sox strikes out.
I
So is
don't
that
care
saying
about
is everyone?
strikeouts. I care about like
No, well, no,
not
that's not.
making contact. I care
I
about
care
not
about
making contact, which is different
yeah,
to me.
but no, I care about strikeouts when they get to a certain level. But like if you're gonna hit 30, if you have 35, 40 home run power, I'm fine with you striking out at a 30% rate. If you don't have that, then it's a concern. Do you know what I mean? I think there's a rolling scale depending on the type of player you are. But yeah, I don't think Casas has gotten to the point of being overrated. Um, and yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm
Yeah,
at.
and as for the second part of it, I mean, the fact that it's risk money you can get back, I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know how you get money back. Um, when get all MLB contracts are guaranteed, so no, you can't get the money back if you give it to players if you're operating with a budget. So I think there is something to that. Um, Next email is from skip that one. Let's go to this one from Ian, who says he has a longer email. He says, with the package the Red Sox gave up in the Crochet deal, do you feel like this is a sign the Red Sox haven't given up on Marcelo Meyer? Almost all pundits had him being the sacrificial lamb, yet Craig found a way to keep him in the system. I personally find this fascinating as normally GMs don't have much attachment to prospects that the previous regime collected. There's a second part of this, but let's start there, Ian. I don't know that I agree with almost any of that characterization. Um,
Yeah,
I don't think there was any indication they had, quote, given up on him. I
yeah.
don't recall reading that he was getting traded. And I don't necessarily agree that like GMs don't have much attachments to prospects from the previous regime. Like a good GM knows when they have a talented player.
Well, it's also that
Um,
it's not like it's just a GM in a front office. Like, yes, Craig Breslow is new, but almost everyone else in the front office was here when Marcelo Meyer was drafted.
sure,
Like,
sure. Yeah.
like Paul Taboni, who was the scouting director when he was there, is one of the top five decision makers in New York now.
Hmm.
So, just saying that like just because Breslow wasn't here, it makes him expendable. I don't agree with that assessment.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, no one's given up on Marcelo Meyer. He's a top 25 prospect in baseball. I think that people assumed that he would be the one to go because they know that Campbell and Anthony are untradeable, are
Hmm.
untouchable. And I'm
Yep.
sure in the right deal, maybe the Red Sox do consider it, but it's just
Sure.
in the Crochet deal, he's not someone I would have given up Marcelo Meyer for. I think we talked about it when we recorded the podcast. Like there's levels, and Crochet doesn't have the certainty for me to be willing to give up like an elite prospect like Meyer. So
Yeah. Oh, we originally didn't want to give up Teal. And
yeah,
then
well,
like we
yeah,
said,
I
the
mean,
price tag based on how the offseason's gone went up.
yeah, you had no choice there to get him
Yeah.
to get it done. I mean, I like, yeah, like I think we talked about it, but Montgomery, I'm more concerned about Montgomery than Teal. I think in terms of overall impact, chance to come back and bite you. But giving up both of them was tough. But I understand why they did it, given the price for pitching has been this offseason.
Mhm. And his second question is, who do you think gets first dibs at being the next man up when an arm inevitably goes down, Fitz, Priester, or Dobbins? I think the answer is whose day is it to pitch? and who's pitching well at that point in time. I
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
think
I would
it's.
say Fitz and Priester though are ahead of Dobbins. Like those two
I
have
think
major
that's.
league
I think
experience.
that's true, but I think if it's like if you get to June and Dobbins is throwing well, I think he throws himself right into
But
that
given
conversation.
true, but given they have all three of them as options, I would assume that they're not going to be like, hey, it's Dobbins Day, but Priester's the next day. We're going to go to Dobbins. Like
Yeah,
I
it
think
wouldn't.
Fitz and I think Fitz and Priester would get the first shot.
I think it wouldn't surprise me if they spread Fitz and Priester out in the Worcester rotation. I would be kind of surprised if the two of them are like Tuesday, Wednesday. Like I think they get split up so
I
that
could see that.
there's
Like one of the pitches Tuesday, one of the pitches Saturday or something, or
or
Tuesday, Friday.
Friday, yeah,
Yeah.
Friday or something, so that they're like spread out across the
Yeah.
rotation. So it makes it more likely one of your top options is ready when you need them. Um, Next email is from Dan, who he had asked about the money the Red Sox sent to the Yankees in the Carlos Narvaez trade. His question was, what happens to unused IFA bonus pool money? Yeah, it's use it or lose it. You don't get to keep it, which is why including that money in the Narvaez trade was a nothing burger to me if they didn't have anyone they were going to use it. And he said, I don't understand why the Yankees would want that money if they have only 4 days to spend it, but then they went out a couple days later and used it. So that was the point. Next question is from our friend John Berman. And John had a great question, Ian. John asked, given what free agent pitchers are getting this offseason in a pretend world where Cutter Crawford was hitting free agency this year, how much do you think he would make? And he also asks as a follow-up, do you think does this pitching market make you reevaluate the Brian Bayo deal? Both, I like both questions. This guy should do that sort of thing for a living. What do you think about Cutter Crawford, what he would make now? I mean,
Well,
he's
I mean,
got,
if we're saying he's hitting free agency as a 29-year-old coming
yeah.
off 183, he's probably getting 460, 345 at
Mhm.
least, maybe more. I mean, Eovaldi got what, 375? And
Yeah.
obviously Eovaldi's been better, but in terms of durability and kind of performance, Crawford can still be right, in that ballpark of what Eovaldi is now. So I would say,
You
yeah,
think?
I mean,
Is it? Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Crawford has been a 2 WAR plus pitcher the last 2 years. Eovaldi is basically he was 2.3 last year, so they're basically in the same ballpark war wise.
And
So
Bald and Evaldi's going in the wrong direction,
yeah,
age
so
wise.
yeah, I mean probably 360. Three. I mean, I'm at 345 might have been really light actually. Now that I think about it, probably like 3 or 4 year deal at 60 to 70. 15 plus to 20, 22 million AAV. Like he would get a really good contract, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. But that's why, I mean, young guys like that don't hit free agency is the other
Yeah,
part of it. Right.
yeah.
And then as far as the Bayo deal, I mean, it is kind of interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah, it's a good question.
I,
I think
you
that
know,
I it does make me reevaluate, and I think it's also something that I didn't really factor in is that we probably should be doing this is just thinking about contracts as a percentage of the cap up until the first threshold, because like real time money, Bayo's contract, whatever it is, when we look at it in terms of what the cap is now, is not going to be the same in 5 years or whatever we get to
mhm.
that extension point or the point where he's making the big bucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like when he's making that in terms of real money, it's probably going to look fine because the cap will have gone up and pitchers will be making more, not the cap, but like the luxury tax threshold will have gone up and pitchers are probably going to be making more money than they are now. So
Well, I mean, he's a $9 million hit against the CBT.
yeah.
Like
So at 9 million,
that's,
it's a really good number.
it's the same amount of money they're paying Patrick Sandoval.
And that's the case for why you do the pre-arb extensions is you get
Right.
those super cheap years built in to drive the
The
CBT
AAV.
tax way
Yep.
down. And at the end of the day, if you're a fan, I would care far more about what the CBT number is than I would like the real world money, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Because
I
like,
really don't care what their actual spend is. Yeah,
no, that's my point. Because like actual spend, I'm sure they're going to be above that threshold. But at the end of the day, what matters is the CBT number because that's
yeah,
when the penalties start coming in.
yep, yeah. This isn't the A's and needing to get to 150% of what they received in revenue sharing and actual spend in order to not have a grievance from the union. But yeah, thanks for those questions, John. As always, we appreciate it. Um, oh, okay, here we go. Our next question, Ian, comes from. Let's skip that one. Let's skip that one. Let's go to an email that won't load. Let's go to this email from Paul. And he asks about spring training. He says, I appreciate all the work you keep put in to keep us informed. I've never been to spring training before and I'm thinking of going this year. I would like to go the week of February 17th. At what point in spring training would you say it is worth going? Is the big league team still conducting workouts for the public to view? Is there a lot of action on the backfields? Any input would be appreciated. Thank you and go Sox. Thanks for the question, Paul. Ian, I think it kind of depends on what you want to see, right? Do you want to see the big league team out back? Do you want to see minor leaguers walking around? Worth noting that I don't think there is access to minor league games out back anymore. I'm trying to remember because it's been changing every year. I think there was access to the morning, but not the afternoon. Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're gonna get to
But
see
if they're
guys taking
away, like
like,
the Twins, or you can go
yeah,
watch though.
yeah. I guess that's true. You can go watch over at the Twins complex,
Yeah.
which is if you're in town for any length of time, they're likely to be over at the Twins at some point.
Yeah.
Because
But
they
if you're
spend
going in
most of the time
February, there's
playing.
no minor league games. That's the other thing, because
No.
minor league games don't start until mid March. So,
Yeah.
and the
It
minor
is.
leaguers, I'm not even sure if they're there, and like they are there, but I'm not sure they're doing formal workouts in mid February.
I was also going to say, and one thing I just remember from this past year when we were there, a lot of the minor league work is happening in the cages now. So you're not really getting the minor leaguers out back in the morning as much as you used to.
Yeah.
Some
It's
guys will
not the
come
same
out.
as it used to be a few
It
years ago,
really
where
isn't.
everyone was out there doing, hitting on the field, PFPs. Now you get a few guys hit on the field each day. They do their infield and everything work, but the majority of the hitting is done in the cages now because that's obviously where they have all the technology.
Exactly, exactly. So I think, look, maybe go earlier on, see the teams working out back. It's worth noting this year that on, what is it, Ian? It's March the 13th is the spring breakout game, although that's going to be at Port Charlotte. That's the major league spring training game where the teams play their top prospects in the system. That's happening, I think, on the 13th in Port Charlotte at Tampa. And on the 14th, they're going to have the Futures at Fenway South, which we still don't really know what it is. It seems like it's probably going to be an intra squad at Boston because they're not playing a team. It's like a separate thing, I think. But more on that as we get closer, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe let's hit one or two more emails. Does that sound good to you? Um, let's see. How about this one? This email's from Mo. He says he's checking in from Germany/Egypt and would like to express how engaging you guys make supporting the team from overseas. Well, thank you for keeping up from
I
overseas,
like
Mo.
that this just went straight over your head.
What's that?
This is a
It's
Liverpool
Mo.
reference.
The what
This is a Liverpool reference.
is it? Well, I get Mo Saleh as a player, right?
He's German and Egypt. Well,
Oh, okay. He's a German. Okay.
Well, he's Egyptian, but
Okay.
I'm guessing that the emailer is in Germany would be my guess.
Okay,
But
fair
yeah,
enough. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Well, I mean, I guess Brian Cashman was emailing us from a Brian Cashman email, so maybe this is the actual player.
maybe
Anyway,
Mo Salah. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising with the FSG connection.
that's true. That's true. That's true. And they are, where they are on the table. But anyway, uh, his question is as follows. He says, "Do you guys think the Red Sox might opt for a six-man rotation next year?" So we talked about it. So I just wanted to give him a shout out for pointing that out. And he says, "If not, what might this mean for someone like Crawford, possible trade chip?" Um, I think I had a different answer for this a few days ago than I do now.
Yeah, I mean, I think going to the offseason, you told me, I think the same. I agree with you that if they added multiple pitchers, you're probably looking to trade Crawford. But I do think that thinking about it more, and reflecting more on last season with what the Dodgers did, it just shows how many starting pitchers you need. Like they had an entire rotation that was on the IL at the end of the year,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like at this point, if you go in with five starters, you're risking disaster because we saw that last season. You're one injury away if you don't have depth from having to start, bullpen games every fifth day. And I don't think the Red Sox want any part of that, which
Brad Keller
understandably so. Yeah.
received starts last year.
Chase Anderson, Brad Keller,
Bullpen
like,
games left and right. I think they
yeah.
don't want it
Who
anymore.
was the
You're
one?
not going to get any bullpen
Who
games
was the
this
one
year.
2 years ago? The ex Marlin, who was a sacrificial lamb, and he gave up like 10 runs.
Bear Claw.
Yes, thank you,
Kyle
Kyle
Bearclaw.
Bearclaw. Yeah,
Yep. 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 All right. I think that's probably any more of these on emails. Yeah, I think we're good. We've got some more still in here. We'll get to some of them. We won't get to others. But thank you all again. It's podcast at soxprospects.com. And with that, we will wrap things up. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to Daniel Fox for producing the show. Follow the site on social media at Sox Prospects. You can follow Ian at Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. And follow me at SP Chris Hatfield. Thank you for the Love Those Thieves for our intro and outro music, All the Money. Great tune. Find more of their great tunes wherever it is that you listen to music. And thank you to our supporters on patreon.com/Sox Prospects. Today we want to shout out James O'Sullivan, Shane Regan, Dakota Randall, Jeff Smith, Carl Meyer, Jose Lopez, Matthew Levine, Zachary Mancini, or I think it's Mancini, sorry, Jay Harrington, and Josh Ball. Thank you all for your support. For Ian, I'm Chris. We'll be back in your eardrums in 2025. Happy New Year, everybody.
It's the last podcast of the year.
It is.
Talk to you next year.
We will talk to you next year. Everybody, go out, enjoy your New Year's Eve parties. Enjoy them safely. And have some fun. Tell everybody. It's a good one. Thanks. Take care.